cents for your dollar today. Did you drink lithium water, lithium and fluoride water? Did you forget your medication today? Let me know. Are you retarded? Are you really that retarded? Oh, I'm so eloquent, like Charles Bronson. I walk in the spot with Lord Monckton. Your breath is poisoning the wind, and you develop a product to possibly stop it. Can polar bears swim? There ain't no mother-loving doubt. Give me the mic before one of Al Gore's goons drag me out. Climate gate, some people keep yelling. They don't like the lie, some people keep telling. Is this the planet of the apes? Did I awake in deep space in 3978? What happened to your warming trend, my friend? I mean, didn't Greenland used to grow grapes? The ice caps are melting.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Thanks for joining me today. My name is Jay Anarchon. I will be your host. This is Cognitive Concurrence, Episode 8, featured on my website, cognitiveconcurrence.com. Be sure to check it out. There's tons of great videos on there. All the episodes of Cognitive Concurrence. I feature my second segment, video segment, which is interviews with other people. It's called Cognitive Conversations, so you can check that out on the website as well. I also periodically post articles on the website, and I have an awesome video links page, which has links to tons of other researchers besides myself that have put out tons of great work. There's a couple short videos there that are just interesting to watch as well, so you might want to check that page out. Before we jump into today's episode, which is titled The Practical Application of the Trivium, Learn, Think, Do, I just wanted to run through a couple announcements today. There is a musician that's been involved in the truth movement named Payday Monsanto. Payday Monsanto, he's going through a little bit of a tough time right now, and he's making a call out to everybody for support. So I have posted some links on the homepage of cognitiveconcurrence.com. You can go to the website there and check it out. It's on the homepage under announcements. And there's a link there. You can click through to donate directly to Payday via PayPal, and you have the opportunity to download as many of his albums as you choose as well. So he's looking for a $10 donation for any one of his albums, or a $40 donation for all 6 of his albums, which is a really amazing fair exchange, I would say. It's not really donating when you're getting that much in return from somebody. So once again, Payday Monsanto needs our support, everybody. So be sure to go to the Cognitive Concurrence homepage and check that out under announcements. Another thing I would like to bring up is I've added an activism page to cognitiveconcurrence.com. And on this page, I've thrown up 2 methods that everybody can participate in globally, and it can really start to make a difference for impacting the world in a positive fashion. The first method is, it's titled Mastermind. So it's actually based around everybody focusing their mental energy on achieving a specific goal. So, the goal in mind for this mastermind group would be freedom and abundance for all of humanity. So simply to participate, all you have to do is be willing to set aside 5 minutes of your day to focus your mental energy towards imagining that we exist in freedom right now, that we exist in a world with full disclosure where people live in accordance with natural law, and we don't have to worry about having our rights violated on a daily basis. So that was the first method that I came up with, and I figured that was a very easy way for everybody to get involved. Like I said, it's just taking 5 minutes of your day. If you already incorporate meditation into your daily routine, setting aside 5 minutes of your meditation routine to consciously focus on freedom and abundance for all of humanity, I think would go a long way to pushing humanity towards the thought patterns and energy patterns that are required to achieve freedom on Earth. So, I think that's a very powerful method of moving towards achieving that goal. And for those of you that have never participated in a mastermind group, it works, and it works so well that it's almost scary, folks. And I've achieved some pretty difficult goals in very short amounts of time during participation in a mastermind group. So this is really serious stuff, and once you start studying the occult, it really has deep roots in a knowledge of the way that the universe and energy functions, right? So it's not a joke, and like I said, it's very powerful, and I'd really like to see as many people as possible jump on board. The second method that I put up is something that I've heard Max Egan calling for many years in his radio show, and that's for everybody to organize and get together and maybe just stop participating in the system for 1 day per month. Some people have theorized that if everybody stopped spending money for 1 day, the whole system would crash. Maybe that's not what we're looking to achieve. That might affect everybody a little more negatively than some people are prepared for at this time. I think that with the few of us that can jump on board, we can start gradually making a difference with this, and hopefully influence others around us to start taking a look at the issues and start taking a look at how they can start taking their own power back. And these are easy, small things to do, and they'll drastically change the world around us. So what I've postulated is taking the ninth day of every month, regardless of what day of the week that ends up falling on, and just taking that 1 day to not earn or spend any money at all. So, don't go to work, don't go to the bank, don't go to the store, don't shop online, nothing business related, and just take that day for yourself, and maybe to spend with your friends and family. So definitely not a negative thing, and again, something that could be very, very powerful, especially if we get a substantial number of people backing this movement. So this is what I'm putting forth, ladies and gentlemen. Ninth day of every month, no work, no spending money, boycott the financial system altogether on the ninth of every single month, 12 days a year. I think that's a reasonable place to start, and I look forward to hearing from some of you that hit me up and are willing to join in on this. I think it's going to be great, and hopefully we can get some energy put behind this. So I guess that's it for announcements today. Let's jump right into the episode. Once again, the title is The Trivium: Learn, Think, Do. So, in today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Trivium process. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, the Trivium is basically a learning methodology that allows you to consume, process, and produce something with information that you take in. So, the first stage of the Trivium is learning. So, you know obviously you can't progress in any field without taking in new information. So the basis of the Trivium process is learning and taking in information. And when you're learning and you're taking in information, what you want to do is gather information from multiple sources. And I'm going to give everybody a great example of something that was very profound for me towards the end of the presentation here regarding this. But I think this is the most important aspect when you're gathering your information, is to make sure that you get it from a few different sources. I like to use the analogy of, say, a sports game in a huge stadium. There's thousands and thousands of people there, and everybody has a different vantage point of the game. Maybe some people went in and they got some food during the game. Some people went and used the washroom. So although everybody was at the same game, all of these people are going to have a different perspective of the same event. And their perspective may be drastically different from somebody else, and it could still be 100% true. So when you're gathering information, it's very important to gather it from a few different sources at the very least. Like I kind of set three as like a base for any topic that I just want to scratch the surface on. So say somebody had mentioned that there was fluoride in the water supply, and I wanted to research that for myself. I would typically take at least three different sources just in my preliminary research. If you want to go deep into a subject, obviously gathering information from as many different sources as possible would help you get the clearest picture of what you're trying to learn about and study. So, study information with an open heart and an open mind. And this is very difficult for most people to do, and myself included. This is to look at information without allowing your emotions to get involved, or allowing preconceived ideas to act as a barrier between you and new information. So, regardless of what you think you may know right now, you still have to be willing to look at information with an open heart and an open mind, and be willing to take that information, as it is, and then as a whole with what you already know, to try and correlate the truths between it. Don't shut something down before you've given it your full attention as well and given it a chance, right? This kind of goes hand in hand with studying information with an open heart and an open mind, and this is to watch for triggers and control yourself, mainly your emotions is what I'm talking about here. So if somebody's presenting information and you're feeling emotional about that, that means you're getting triggered. And it could be because of a preconceived idea you have in your mind. It could be because of a past trauma. It could be related to several different psychological aspects. That's why it's called a trigger. So you don't really have too much control over it. As soon as something happens related to this, you will feel a certain way. Oh, excuse me for a sec. And basically, what you want to do when you feel like you're being triggered is recognize that, and use that to guide yourself, and really just control that emotion. Look at why you're getting triggered. Why do you feel emotional right now because of the information that's being presented? Is it reasonable to feel emotional about that? These are all things you have to ask yourself when you're looking at something. And if you aren't able to look at something, you know, a little bit detached from the emotion initially, you may not be able to look at the issue with an open heart and an open mind. So be careful, watch for triggers. If you're getting triggered out, it's a good indication that you need to do some work within yourself regarding this area. Even if the information is something that you know isn't right, or that you don't agree with, it shouldn't necessarily instantaneously trigger an emotional response in you, without you being able to control that. So, this is something that we all have to work on. Obviously, our society is based around psychological trigger and emotional triggers. This is what all advertisement is based on. A lot of the educational system is based on this, getting rewards and grade systems and stuff like that, right? So, this is something that we're taught, and it's deeply psychologically programmed into us. So, again, it's something that you have to work very hard and consciously monitor and consciously work to change within yourself. I felt this was important to bring up because I think in the internet age with YouTube and podcasts, a lot of people think that they can just listen to something, or watch a video on it, and they have a decent grasp on the topic. And, I don't really feel that that's quite the case. Even when you look at something like an audiobook, there's books where I've listened to the audiobook and read the book, and reading the book is a totally different experience, right? So I find you come to a much deeper level of understanding when you're reading and articulating every single word yourself in your mind, taking the time to possibly look up words that you don't know the definition of, expanding your vocabulary at the same time. So reading is very important, and I think if you want to develop a deep understanding of any subject, aside from real world experience, reading is the next best way to come to a deep level of understanding. Experience is definitely superior to any other form of learning, but that's the final stage of the trivium, so we'll be getting to that in a minute. Take notes and draw pictures. And this is something that I want to kind of bring from a new angle, not the way that you're taught to do in school. So basically, all you're looking for is things that grab your attention or things that you don't understand and want to investigate deeper. Right now, we're at a stage of self education. So it's not based around conforming to any sort of system. And I want to kind of set this aside as a different form of note taking than you would typically do in school, because you can take as much time as you want to do this. And when you're incorporating drawing pictures in with your notes, it really brings you to a deeper level of understanding. And I'll give you a great example of this. When I was studying the beginning of the Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barden, he gets into a lot of energy flow of the body and which parts of the body are positive and negative, and it's a lot to take in to just read, and a lot to try and visualize and retain all that information, and also understand it just by reading it. So I ended up drawing a lot of that out and coloring it and combining it with notes. And while I was doing that, I came to several epiphanies based on some prior research that I had done, and came to a whole new level of understanding on the way that energy flows through and works within the body. So this was really the profound epiphany that kind of made me realize that drawing pictures can be very powerful, and in some situations even more powerful than writing or reading or speaking words. So this might be why pictographs and art has always been used to communicate very important ideas and hand them down from generation to generation, because images are very powerful. And there's a saying that a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's definitely the case. And something like a tarot card, which is a picture made up of 1,000 pictures, well, obviously the depth of meaning in something like this is literally limitless. And once you start getting into synchromysticism and stuff like this, they get deeper than even the creator of the art could have intended, right? So take notes and draw pictures, give it a shot. I think it'll take your learning and your self-education to the next level. The second aspect of the trivium is thinking. So now that you've taken in information, you've gathered information from multiple sources, what you need to do is contemplate this information. You need to process it within your mind, right? So you need to use your real world experience, information that you've gathered in the past, things that you've confirmed to be true for yourself, and you need to use all of these in conjunction with one another to process the information that you've just taken in properly. So when you're thinking, you need to process the information you've gathered by correlating truths and using previous knowledge and intuition as a guide. So, as I was saying, you don't want to just read something and believe it. This is where discernment comes in. This is where being intelligent and being analytical comes into play, right? We wouldn't have these analytical capacities if we weren't supposed to use them. So once you've gathered information from multiple different sources, to correlate the truth, I find, if you have people from multiple different angles giving you the same details, the same story, there's a very good chance that there's some validity to that, especially if they're not connected to one another whatsoever. So, a great example is if you're learning about something in occult philosophy, and then you read something in a medical journal that correlates with the occult philosophy that you've just studied. They're not only are these people not connected. I've had this happen to me when the person that wrote the article or the book were alive hundreds of years apart. So they have no physical connection, no monetary connection. Not only that, they're in totally different fields of research. So when you start seeing things like that correlate, it's a very good indication that you've stumbled upon some truth. And again, using your previous knowledge and intuition as a guide when considering all new information that you've brought in with an open heart and open mind, will allow you to process the information in a way that will be more beneficial to you rather than just choosing to accept or disregard something based on an emotional trigger or based on what you currently believe. So, yeah. Do not be afraid to discard incorrect ideologies and admit when you are wrong. And this is something that everybody will have to do many, many times throughout their life. I just come to a realization recently that I need to make several changes in a couple areas in my life. And, I think it's really easy to get caught in a trap if you're not willing to look at what you're doing wrong and realize that you can be wrong, regardless of how much research you've done, regardless of how much life experience you've had. There's no arrival point when it comes to attaining knowledge or attaining, physical or mental or spiritual fitness. Don't be afraid to admit when you're wrong, and don't be afraid to discover new truths and progress with new ideas and to new levels, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. We have to be willing to do this. So I think when I speak to a lot of people, this is one thing that most people have a really big issue with, and I think it's based in fear. And the only way to conquer that fear is to start looking at yourself honestly and to tackle that demon head on. Look deeper into aspects you do not understand or disagree with. So if you come across some information and your immediate inclination is to totally disregard it or disagree with it, I recommend taking a look at it a little bit deeper. At the very least, you'll probably be able to extract something out of your research that will be beneficial to you. And you can always confirm or disprove your beliefs, right? So, keeping yourself open and looking deeper into things that you do not understand or disagree with is definitely key. If you're contemplating some information that you've brought in and you don't understand it, obviously just disregarding it isn't really the most viable option, because you could be disregarding something that's very important, right? So don't be afraid to do a little bit more research if you're not reaching the conclusions that you wish to reach in your thinking. And come to conclusions in gnosis, that's knowing and understanding, and never illogically believe. And I decided to distinguish between logical belief and illogical belief in this presentation. And, I think there's a very good reason for doing that. And what got me kind of thinking in this direction was when I was reading an older text that had been translated into English. I started to think that maybe the word believe didn't really have the same connotation, and maybe it was just the best translation that they could come up with in English, right? So that kind of got me thinking about the whole concept of belief. So in this presentation, we're going to distinguish between logical and illogical belief. A logical belief is formed by using your current knowledge base in correlation with known laws in our reality. So, if I stand at the edge of the roof of a building and I have a rock, I can logically assume and logically believe that if I drop the rock off of the side of the building, it's going to fall and hit the ground very quickly because it's heavy. I understand the basic concept of gravity. So, this is a logical belief. I haven't sat down and calculated the physics behind it to prove that if I hold my hands over the side of this building and let go of the rock that it's going to fall. But it's a perfectly logical belief based on the information that I've acquired and the life experience that I've gone through in my time here on earth. So that's an example, a great example of a logical belief. An illogical belief is typically founded on the opinions or statements of others, on fear, or on nothing at all. And I think we all know or have maybe even entertained illogical beliefs. All of us have had illogical beliefs throughout our lives. A lot of it's just related to things that people don't want to look at. Like I said, it's a lot of it's rooted in fear. If you take statism, for example, and people that are just unwilling to take a look at the corruption and the reality of the bullshit that we're existing in, is, it's so undeniable to anybody who's done the research with an open heart and open mind and gathered information from eclectic sources instead of only listening to the mainstream media and only listening to the politicians. It's a totally illogical belief, but behind that illogical belief is the fear of what would happen if they didn't have this state taking care of them, this government daddy mommy system taking care of them. And a lot of people are just so afraid of the responsibility that could possibly go along with not having government that they don't even want to take a look at the information that is out there and widely available. They'd rather entertain their illogical belief. Another great example of an illogical belief is people that believe in a religion without doing any sort of research. Talking to somebody for a few hours and just accepting something, invoking spirits into yourself that you have no idea what you're fucking doing, what you're getting involved in. This kind of thing is an illogical belief based on the statements and opinions of others. Many people, they believe their preacher's interpretation of whatever book their cult religion follows, and it's all of their illogical beliefs are founded on the opinions and statements of others. They're not openly studying these texts for themselves, taking everything in context of the time it was written, doing research and gathering information from other sources and seeing where the truth correlates and where the information resonates with truth. Another great example of an illogical belief. And then I have here that an illogical belief can be founded on nothing at all. And there's people that just believe certain things because that's what they want to believe. They don't care. I've even heard people say, well, that's just what I choose to tell myself. That's what I choose to believe. So, that's another form of an illogical belief. So, illogical beliefs are just, they're foundationless and illogical. It's very self-explanatory, and I think that, it's helpful to distinguish between these two types of belief, because not believing in anything ever, having no faith in anything, is also very unhealthy. So just with everything, I have the left and right brain here for the image on this slide, and that's because just with everything else, we need to be balanced with this approach. You can't just throw belief out the window and have no faith in anything at all ever. So logical belief is balanced if you take a look at it, right? Forming a logical belief requires you to utilize the rational left brain in cooperation with the imaginative right brain and higher energies. Most inventions, art, scientific theories, etc., stem from this balanced brain approach of looking at things that cannot be substantiated with a logical imagination and using intuitive faculties. So, logical belief really is a balanced form of belief if you take a look at it. So now we're getting to the final stage of the trivium. We've started with learning. The second stage is thinking. So now that you've gathered information, you've thought about the information, you've disregarded the bullshit, you've correlated the truths, now it's time to take action, not just talk. This episode is titled The Practical Application of the Trivium. So this also applies to any sort of information, right? Let's look at something very simple, like the skills required to build a house. If you gather a bunch of information about home building and you read it all, you gather information from different sources, you think about it, you determine in your mind what would probably be the best ways to go about certain things. The last step, doing, is essentially required to add any value to the information you've just acquired. So if you spent your whole life researching how to build a home and you've never actually picked up a set of tools and built a house, that information is useless, right? It's essentially like a seed that has never germinated. So without this final stage of the practical application of the trivium, everything you've done prior is useless, essentially a waste of time. I guess a great hobby. If researching is a hobby of yours and a way you enjoy spending your time, then you've spent some time doing your hobby, so that's great. But the information really holds no value until you begin to apply it in the real world. And there's a reason why everybody has a problem with this. Tons of people know that they should be eating better, know that they shouldn't be consuming certain things. Maybe some people have done some research on psychology and they know that, consuming as much television as they do isn't good for them. All sorts of things, right? Why is it so hard for anybody to implement a lifestyle change after they've gathered this information and even come to terms with the validity of it and accepted it as truth? The smoker that won't quit smoking cigarettes all the time, alcoholics that know that they're killing themselves and won't even try to stop drinking, right? Why are we missing this integral part of the trivium? And based on my research, I think this is largely due to the educational system. And in our education system, we're taught to memorize, not gather information from a bunch of sources, just memorize it from one source. We're taught to not think about it at all. In fact, if you question the status quo, quite often you'll be reprimanded for that. And then you're not taught to do. You just regurgitate back what they've told you, so you're just talking. And I think that's why with our generation now, most of the people that you see are, keyboard commandos or internet activists, as I've termed them in one of my latest articles on cognitiveconcurrence.com. And I'll be honest with you that I've kind of taken it from the opposite approach, and I've been applying a lot of these principles within my life for many, many years before I jumped online. I've never been involved with social media, and I'm just, it's never really been my thing. So I've actually gone through all this other work, over the slowly over a decade before I began to present this to others. So, coming at it from the opposite angle, I noticed there's a lot of people out there, even some of the guys with and girls with enormous platforms that have made a very huge impact on people's thinking. But I think even they themselves aren't applying a lot of the stuff that is required to achieve freedom in their lives, especially when it comes to unity and community and working together to achieve goals. So this final stage of doing has been programmed out of us, and we really need to consciously reprogram ourselves and take back this missing part of the trivium. In fact, all three parts of it have been stolen from us, but especially this last part. I can't stress it enough. The doing is the most important aspect of the trivium. Like I said, if you take in information and you don't do anything with it, the information is useless. So taking action is the most difficult aspect of the trivium to apply and is also the most important. Writing down your goals is a great way to consciously achieve things that you want to achieve. And if you start doing research into the occult, maybe you've done some research into success, business success in the past, this is one of the most important aspects of achieving goals. And there's a reason they call it spelling and cursive writing. It's because it's very, very powerful. So don't forget this step. If there's anything you want to achieve, write your goals down. You'll be surprised at the power of this. Like, I've seriously made lists of goals that if people read, they would most likely consider them impossible for themselves to achieve. And I've gone back to goal lists after not looking at them for several months, and my jaw just like landing on the floor, and I'm sitting there in disbelief at what I've achieved off of my own goal list. This has real power, just like the mastermind group that I had mentioned at the beginning of this episode. Man, the power behind writing down your goals, behind spelling something out, is undeniable. And if you try it for yourself and use the scientific methodology of testing this in your life, you will also agree with me on this. Definitely undeniable. Develop self accountability. I've put out a video it's on my homepage, and it's called, let me see here, guys. Give me a sec. I can't remember what I titled the video. Here, I'll just pull it up quickly. The video is titled 7 Steps to Becoming a Self-Starter. It's a very short video. I think it's like 12 or 15 minutes or something, but it gives you basically all of the tools you need to develop self-accountability. Again, this is something that's stolen from us during the education process. We're taught to be accountable to an authority figure, and we're taught not to think for ourselves, and we're taught not to do. So developing self-accountability is something that you'll have to work very hard at consciously to achieve. And again, there's no arrival point. I'm not 100% self-accountable, nor is anybody else, regardless of what they might tell you. So this is something you have to do your best on and constantly work at to get better every day. But developing self-accountability is the only way that you'll consistently do things that you set out to do. The only way you'll consistently take action. Prioritizing things is a huge issue for a lot of people, and I think what will help people with prioritizing is being realistic about things. And I think a lot of people need to recognize the fact that most of our leisure time is spent in entertainment because we aren't happy with our lives, right? If you're doing a job and spending your energy serving your purpose on this planet, and you would feel fulfilled. You wouldn't feel this need for constant escapism and stuff. So, when you're prioritizing things that are actually important to you, it's a lot harder for something that's unimportant to pull you away. So if I was deciding to take the time to record an episode of Cognitive Concurrence and one of my friends wanted me to come over and have a beer, I might choose to record my episode of Cognitive Concurrence instead because I prioritize that for myself in that day. Again, if I didn't prioritize for that example, then that would not get achieved that day. So I wouldn't be doing that, right? You're missing that final stage of the trivium if you don't consciously take control of that. So prioritizing stuff for yourself, not being a victim of other people. This is also in my 7 steps to becoming a self-starter, I believe. Not being a victim of other people and other people's schedules and desires will help you to achieve your goals. Stop lying to yourself. Stop making excuses. It's nobody else's fault if you're not doing anything. If you've made it this far through this episode, you already know what's missing. You know what you need to do to start making changes in your life. And, basically do some research into psychology, do some more research into the trivium, and start doing research into topics that interest you and areas that you need to improve your life. And stop fucking lying to yourself. And, you'll see the change. You'll feel the change. It'll be undeniable. Stop lying to yourself, people. It's so important in every aspect. And again, even over a decade into researching psychology and, definitely about 5 years of working on myself and attempting to heal myself, I still catch myself lying to myself. So being conscious of it is the first step. And then obviously calling yourself out on your bullshit and not letting that shit fly is key. Take responsibility. So again, don't lie to yourself and take responsibility for everything. At the end of the day, it's your fault if you didn't achieve something. It's your fault if you didn't apply some knowledge. It's your fault if you didn't take the time to properly research something. It's your fault if you didn't take the time to think about something, to process it. Take responsibility for everything in your life, ladies and gentlemen. You're not a victim. It's not the government's fault. It's not your social status fault. It's not your parents' fault anymore. If you've been brought to this information and you're in this place here and now, you're being given the tools you need and pushed in the direction you need to be guided in to reach where you need to reach at this time. And that's different for everybody at every stage of their development. So, there's no guru that can tell you where you need to go. But utilizing the trivium will help you to travel in the direction that you need to travel in, based in truth and knowledge and understanding. The scientific method. When implemented correctly, the scientific method of collecting data, processing data, forming theories, and testing said theories for veracity is the trivium in action. Think about it. You're collecting information from several sources, you're processing the information, forming new theories, testing those theories, right? You're learning, thinking, and acting. So the scientific method essentially is the practical application of the trivium. Implementing and testing theories is the only way to develop an under, over, and inner standing of any applicable theory or science. So it doesn't matter how much you've read about gravity until you experience it for yourself. You can't understand the impact that this actually has on your physical reality. A great simple example. So regardless of how much research you do into any topic, if you aren't testing these theories and applying them within your life, you're just wasting your time, folks. If you've made it through this whole video, however long it's been here, and you're not applying any of this at all, you're totally wasting your time, right? Why are you here? Why have you made it this far? Take that final step in the trivium and start applying the trivium. Knowledge is attainable. There's very disturbing new age ideology out there that there is no truth and it's impossible to attain knowledge on any sort of topic, and that all truth is subjective and knowledge is unattainable. It's not true. Despite what many now irrationally believe, it is possible to know truth. The ideas that nothing really exists or that truth is subjective are based in either a materialist or new age imbalanced perspective of reality. The materialist lost to all truth that cannot be physically proved. The extreme spiritualist assuming nothing material is important. And I don't really think I need to get any deeper into that. And we can go back into the analogy that I used towards the beginning of the episode of the stadium and the sporting event. You can get many different perspectives of truth that are all true as well. This doesn't make the truth subjective. This sporting event is not subjective. It's not that it was actually different for every person. It was just different based on their vantage point, based on their current knowledge, based on the information that they've taken in, right? So when we're researching things, learning about different topics, we are really standing on the shoulders of giants, you know. When I look at the guys that have gathered information before me and whose work I've been blessed enough to come across. Like, let's look at guys like Jordan Maxwell. This guy has done over 60 years of research. You know, so to be able to learn from a man that's dedicated, you know, what, hundreds of thousands of hours to researching these topics, you're able to utilize his time and take advantage of that, right? Michael Tazarian, man, the amount of research and the span of topics that this guy covers, and like the depth of knowledge that he's attained in these subjects is ridiculous. Like, the guy goes from history to astrology to symbolism to psychology to spirituality, and oh man, like I said, to be able to study the work of somebody who's done the eclectic research necessary to come to those understandings, and they're more than happy to reference where they've gathered all this information from. So not only are you able to benefit from all the work that these men have done, they've also given you the leads to a lot of important information that you can go back and reference their perspective on as well, right? So, you know, and again, I think that's very important as well, as to not believe anybody and to check out their citations and look at where they've gathered their research from, because again, they're just one person in the stadium at the sporting event. So, you know, there's a saying that my brother told me recently, and it's that no person ever reads the same book. And it's very true, right? So, by reading a book that another researcher has read, you can combine their perspective with your perspective and get a clearer perspective of the truth, right? Yeah, so you know, Michael Tazarian, Mark Passio, all these guys, folks, they've put so much time in for the benefit of humanity, and to be able to utilize that as a resource to propel us into further development is so amazing. You know, the internet has been used for a lot of negative, but I think that there's a lot of people that are flipping it around and using it for positive as well. And I'm very happy to be a part of it, and very happy to have learned from people that have, you know, just really given it their all. They've given their life to researching and presenting this knowledge to humanity. So I really thank all the people that have gone before me and have done that. There's a saying, I think many have heard it, and it's those who can't do teach. And I decided to recoin this saying into a true saying. And I've changed it to those who can't do teach those who can't do. And, you know, I really think that sums up our society in a sentence almost. Our whole educational system is based on people that have not incorporated, or is taught from the perspective of people that have not incorporated the Trivium methodology into their lives. Most of these people are not at a level of real understanding and knowledge in the subjects that they teach, and many of them have not applied the subjects that they teach in the real world. So that's how I'd like to put it from now on. I think it's a great one. Those who can't do, teach those who can't do. Well, that's it for this episode of Cognitive Concurrence. Folks, thanks for joining me for episode number 8. I hope everybody's been able to pull something useful from this. Once again, be sure to check out my website, cognitiveconcurrence.com. You can check out all the episodes of Cognitive Concurrence there. Check out my segment, Cognitive Conversations, where I feature interviews with people that I respect. And I also have an articles page. Again, be sure to check out the activism page. There's 2 great ways everybody on planet Earth can get involved in elevating us to a state of freedom. Well, that's about it. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Be sure to share this information with everybody. And stay free, everybody. Take care.
Are you really that retarded? You're sailing on a ship of lies and trickery. If you say the climate changes anthropogenically, the weather has been changing forever for many reasons. The main one is what they call the 4 seasons. And I ain't talking Frankie Valli singing rag, doll. It's all over. The cat is out the bag, y'all. It's such a fraudulent song that they sing. That's why Maurice Strong is hiding in Beijing. The whole UN gang has been caught. And I ain't playing around now for sport. I'ma hunt them down if I ever catch them hanging around my part of town just for not banging my sound.